On this week's Motor Week, we're looking at the latest additions to the family car market, including the all-new Toyota Corolla, the latest version of the Nissan Primera, plus we'll be looking at the shape of things to come with Volvo's SCC safety car.
What's special about this, let's face it, pretty nondescript car? Well, believe it or not, since its launch in 1966, they've sold 29 million Toyota Corollas, and that makes it the world's best-selling car, better even than Volkswagen's Beetle or the Model T Ford. There's now been 9 generations of Corolla, and this is its latest incarnation, but it's very different to the boring old previous models. For a start, it's on a new floor pan. It's wider, it's longer, and it's higher than the previous cars. They've moved the wheels to the extreme corners of the vehicle, learning lessons, no doubt, from the Yaris. But make no mistake, this new Corolla is aimed fair and square at the big hitters on the fleet market. Ford's Focus, Vauxhall's Astra, and Volkswagen's Golf. Toyota really are pinning huge hopes on the success of this car. They want to double Corolla sales in its first full year, and a lot of those sales are going to come from the mini MPV version of this car, which pitches straight into that new market created by Renault's Scenic, by Citroën's Picasso and by Vauxhall's Severa. Inside, well, it's well laid out, rather sombre, you could almost say bland. It's hardly a design guru like, for instance, new Mini or Fiat Multipla. One thing I do like, though, is this ignition switch on an instrument display taken directly from Lexus. Very impressive. Corolla comes in 4 body styles, 3 and 5-door hatchbacks, estate cars, mini MPVs and a saloon, and they're built all over the world. The hatchbacks are built in Derby, the mini MPV and estate come from Japan, and believe it or not, the saloon is made in Turkey. Top of the range is the Corolla T Sport, 189 brake horsepower, 6-speed gearbox, 16-inch alloy wheels, leather seats, you name it, all the knobs and whistles. New Corolla will have much more appeal than the old model. Despite that heritage of the best-selling car in the world, you're tempted to ask whether they should have ditched the name and the boring image of the old car. That said, all the petrol engines are VVT-I, which apparently means something to Toyota, and although it's the 1.4 version, you seem to be able to twirl it round these mountain roads very competently. It feels a bit nose heavy actually, and there's sort of slight plunging now and again, but as you'd expect for a Corolla, very reassuring, and it's very, very difficult to do anything wrong and get into trouble. And even though it's the base version of the car, comfy seats, they hold you quite well even on these corners. Air conditioning is standard, and this electric steering system seems to work pretty well. It's easy to place the car accurately on the road. So how will this car fare against Focus, Golf, Zara, 307 and Astra? Well, it's a fiercely competitive segment of the market and notoriously price sensitive, and fleet customers in particular won't want to pay a premium over the competition. But if Toyota can generate the same sort of enthusiasm for new Corolla as they have for Yaris, for example, they'll be well on the way.
Car safety, it's an absolutely vitally important subject, but let's face it, it is dull. It's about as dull as this tarmac. That's exactly what I thought, but this morning I'm going to show you something that is totally different. I'm going to show you a car that puts the sexy sizzle into safety. Mind you, it's got a pretty boring name, the Safety Concept Car. But believe me, that's the only dull thing about it. This incredible car has no fewer than 20 new safety innovations, confirming Volvo's reputation as the world's safest car maker.
We work extensively within certain areas of safety and within active safety, passive safety and security. And some of these functions will be implemented in products sooner or later.
The cold facts are that 90% of the crucial information a driver uses when he's in a car comes from visual information he gets from either the windscreen or the windows, which is why Volvo have worked on this new safety concept car at turning it into how to improve the vision for the driver when he's on the road. So that was the perfect challenge that Volvo, the kings of safety, needed. They decided to produce a car with all the improvements possible to assist the visual aid for the driver. The end result, of course, is the driver is more relaxed, has more information, makes better decisions, less accidents. And the action happens as soon as you get into the car. You look straight ahead, and as you can see, sensors automatically adjust the seat, the pedals on the floor, the steering wheel to the perfect driving position for you in the car. And forget the thick old traditional A-pillar that always used to obscure your views. That's been replaced by this new metal fixture with plexiglass, and the difference is incredible. Your vision is perfect. And how about this for making parking simpler and safer? Simply engage reverse, and the navigation screen turns into a camera that shows just how close the car behind is. It's like almost being sitting in a bubble. The vision is incredible. Side pillars here where you are normally obscured with things like this, as we're about to go and turn on the corner here, is totally finished now. You've got this great view. It's also a marvellous cabin. I mean, it's very futuristic, but not overcomplicated and messy. Unusually as well for a concept car, it's also an amazingly well put together car. It's one of the most futuristic looking. It's got real appeal though. That's the thing, you could actually see this car going into production very, very quickly. So, I have to say that I feel as safe in this car as I do with leaving Sven in charge of the England team at the moment, and I can pay Volvo no higher compliment than that. Mind you, this car has not come cheap. It's £2.4 million to make this hand-built car, but I'll guarantee an awful lot of this will be going into Volvo cars of the future.
The Nissan Primera has always been a good car, just stuck in a crap suit. So it was about time it had a makeover. In fact, it's had a bit more than that. Several months in the gym, followed by intensive plastic surgery. So meet the new Nissan Primera. If you think this looks like a bit of a new departure for Nissan, you'd be entirely correct. It is. They say, and I quote, that it signposts the way for Nissan cars in the future, and that it is the cornerstone of Nissan in Europe. Oh, come, just leave it out with the clever shots, will you? I mean, there's no point. Thank you. It'll be available from launch with a choice of the following engines: a 1.6, 1.8 or 2 litre petrol, or a 2.2 litre diesel.
There's loads of technology on board.
I'm sorry?
I said there's loads of technology on board, you big ugly git. This thing's been packed with the kind of high-tech kit usually reserved for shuttle missions or really expensive Mercedes.
It's not until you look at the new Primera that you realise how boring and bland the old one was. This is very, very smart. Sharp, even.
Of course, this rear view camera is going to be dead handy for seeing where you're going when you're reversing or who's just piled into the back of you.
Inside, it bristles with more gizmos than a teenager's bedroom. It just smells a lot better. For instance, if you want to use your mobile phone in the car, you don't have to take your SIM card out and put it in the car phone. You simply remove this, put your phone in this cradle, and it works with the car systems. It's charged, it functions, it's nice and easy. That is, of course, as long as your phone is made by the same manufacturer. Everything else you want to use pretty much is controlled from here, the command center. It's been cleverly designed to be as simple to use as possible. And I think I can understand it. It's broken down into 3 areas. On the right, we have our climate control, which is controlled very simply. In the center, we have everything for our sat-nav, DVD by the way, and on the left, all our audio controls. But it doesn't end there. Technology just goes on and on here. We've got all the usual stuff like ABS and traction control, but this has got something else. The cruise control. Once you've set it, it doesn't just hold you at that speed. It monitors what's going on in front with an infrared camera actually at the front of the car. And if you're getting too close to the car in front, it'll slow you down. And if the car in front really slows down, it won't just use engine braking, it'll start to apply the brakes. And it works. Now this is something you can get on very high-end Mercedes, but that's about it. It's the first time you've been able to get this on well, it's a fairly standard car, isn't it? It certainly moves the Primera on, and the styling and levels of sophistication maybe give it the edge over the likes of the Vectra, perhaps even the Mondeo and the Laguna too.
And it's definitely a first having this kind of technology on an ordinary car. Oi, don't press that! Don't do that! Oh, please!
That's it for part 1, but after the break we'll be looking at the luxury end of the market without breaking the bank. Plus Ian Royal's used car tip looks at the Audi A4.
It really is life's little luxuries in a car that make motoring that much more pleasurable. And until recently, such pleasures were really for the privileged few who could afford cars from premium brands. But that is changing because more and more manufacturers are offering upmarket models. And that includes, wait for it, Hyundai. Think about it, 5, 6, 7 years ago, well, they were a joke. Then they brought out their coupe and people started taking them that bit much more seriously. Now this, the XG30, is their take on a luxury executive car. Obviously, as we all know, executives need lots of toys to keep them occupied. And this thing has got everything. They went mad on the spec list. So we've got 4 electric windows, electric mirrors, electrically heated and operated seats, climate-controlled air conditioning. We've got cruise control, traction control. On the sophisticated stereo, it'll even record mini discs for you. Don't know why. As for the drive, well, there's a 3-litre V6 up front. It's not the most sophisticated V6 on the market, but it is creamy smooth in delivering the power, and it sounds all right too. Between the engine and the front wheels, there is a pretty sophisticated automatic gearbox that actually boasts, I can't believe this, a Tiptronic style override so you can manually shift up and down the box. Apparently developed in conjunction with Porsche, so it better be good. And incredibly, you get all of this for, wait for it, £20,999, which ain't bad.
sounds very good. Almost too good to be true, in fact. So I'm going to lob a bit of a spanner in the works. Yes, this is a lot of car for under 21 grand. But if a lot of car is what you're after, then for 15 grand, you could have an immaculate second-hand Mercedes E230. Just breathe it in, pure class. Okay, so the Mercedes doesn't have all the baubles you'll find on the Hyundai, but hey, it's 5 grand cheaper, and anyway, what's a few baubles in exchange for a bit of pedigree and a 3-pointed star on the end of the bonnet? In the case of our sensible old Mercedes, well, 15 grand to buy it when it's 3 or 4 years old, in 3 years' time, it could be worth as much as 10 grand. That is a big saving already. Insurance, you might say. Group 16 for the Hyundai, Group 14 for the Mercedes E-Class. What about running costs? Well, I hate to say this, but you'll probably find unless you go to a big main dealer, you can get your Merc sorted out cheaper than the Hyundai. It's all food for thought. When it comes to interiors, the Hyundai certainly feels much more grand with its leather and plastic wood, more of a sense of occasion. Whilst the Mercedes may not be so ostentatious, there is an air of quiet quality about it, and it will look exactly the same in 10 or 20 years' time, long after the Hyundai's given up the ghost. Of course, all of this would be completely irrelevant if the Merc was a nasty old bag of spanners. But it's not. These things will do 250,000 miles, no problem. Don't even worry about the mileage as long as it's been serviced. And to drive, well, it ain't going to set the world on fire. It's the 230, so it's hardly overpowered. But it just feels like it's been carved from one solid lump of car. It really has been built to last, and that will be in your favour. Look, we've assumed we're not in the market for a fire-breathing hot hatch here. This is not an exciting car, it's a practical prospect. And I'm not advocating you rush straight down to your prestige second-hand car shop and buy something with a pointy star instead of a new one. If you really want a new car, fine, it's your decision. But in the case of our Hyundai, their biggest competition isn't going to be from new cars. I reckon it's from cars like this. 3- and 4-year-old luxury brands.
So at just over £20,000, the Hyundai is fantastic value for money, has good performance and is extremely well equipped. But where it's going to hurt you is with that depreciation, and it's enough to have the Mercedes owners laughing all the way to the bank in a few years' time.
On Used Car Motor Week this week, we go German. If I was to say the words, Vorsprung durch Technik, I'm sure you'll know which car I'm talking about. Ever since its launch in 1995, the A4 has been a success and possibly turned around the fortunes of Audi. Here was a car that could compete with BMW and Mercedes. Now, Avant is Audi terminology for estate, and while this is supposed to be a very capable load carrier, to be honest, in reality, well, it's not. You can get a lot in there and the back seats fold down for those long, bulky items, but I suspect going off on a family holiday will test your packing skills to the limit. Now, the A4 on the whole is pretty well equipped. You get power steering, electric windows, an airbag, ABS brakes, and a stereo. Things like, well, a sunroof and air conditioning or climate control are also particularly useful. Then you have to choose which model and engine size you want to go for. Do you go for 4-cylinder, a V6, a turbo, or a diesel? See what I mean? If you want petrol, then I would recommend you go for the 1.8 turbo, which offers good power and decent fuel economy. If you fancy a diesel, if that's your game, then go for the 110 brake horsepower 1.9 TDI, which, get this, averages nearly 55 miles to the gallon. It almost makes me want to buy one. No, what on earth am I saying? Here's our price guide for what to pay for an A4. A 1.8 N-Reg with 75,000 miles, around 6 grand. P-Reg 1.6 SE with 60,000 miles, £8,500. A 1.8 Turbo R-Reg with average miles, £11,000. Or how about a 1.9 TDI, 36,000 miles for £8,500. Now, the key to buying a quality car like this is condition, service history and specification. And if all those things fit into place, then there's very little else to go wrong.
Be sure to watch next week's Motor Week for our Christmas review show. We'll be looking back at the good, the bad and maybe the ugly cars we've driven throughout the year. Plus we'll be picking our 4 favourite chariots of 2001. See you next week.